Welcome, brothers, to another video. Today we're checking out the Primarch's Mortarion lore, Lord of Death, Death Guard, Warhammer 40k. We know this is the dude who was corrupted by Nurgle, and we've seen a few videos on his Legion. We saw a video from Templin Institute on the Death Guard, and I think I done another video that mentioned them, but I can't remember. But we haven't done Mortarion. Like I said, we're going to do all the Primarchs. Now, obviously, I wanted to do Fulgrim, but I can't find... The Italian Spartacus didn't do a video on Fulgrim yet, and no one else that I wanted to watch has done one on Fulgrim, which is kind of disappointing. Unless I watched Arch Warhammer's Horus Heresy series, and I didn't want to start on like episode 9 or whatever it was, so we'll get to there eventually. But yeah, Mortarion lore, corrupted by Nurgle, man. So this should be fun. We've done a few Primarchs already. Magnus, Conrad. Is that it? Have I only done 2? Well, yeah, we're gonna have to do some more. But yeah, before we get into this video, man, thank you all for the 500 subscribers. We passed 500 subscribers. Also, join our Discord where I made it a few, like yesterday. Like 11 people have joined so far. So yeah, thank you to all those people that have joined. The rest of you, man, start getting in there, man. It's gonna be fun. We talk about Warhammer and all kinds of stuff. But yeah, you guys request videos too. I got a lot of requests to get through. Mortarion lore is today's request, I think. So yeah, we're gonna get through this video. Yeah, but without further ado, man, let's get into this video.
The Death Guard are known far and wide for their tenacity of both body and fighting spirit. With some of the highest toughness of any Marine in the tabletop, the Legion is both grim and resolute in their slow, steady destruction of the enemy. Since we already covered a Loyalist Legion, I figured it would make a lot of sense to go into a Traitor Legion, or a Traitor Primarch, and equal sides of a coin and what have you. But with Lionel Johnston, we have this sort of knightly Primarch, right, dedicated to justice, loyalty, and service. On the other hand, we have Mortarion, the Primarch of the Death Guard. It is a bit of a different character, kind of that equally has, I guess you want to say, aloof and removed as Lionel Johnston, but in a much different way. And even by other Primarch standards, Mortarion is unique in his otherwise intentional, non-ceremonious, simple portrayal. You know, I'm not saying that the Death Guard don't like ceremonies. We all have a good little party, a little bubbly here, a little fancy finger foods there, but fun for all. But what I'm saying is that Mortarion, and by extension his Legion, aren't one for flourishes or bravado. Just a slow grinding wheel of war. Like all their armor is very simple, and there's not many accolades all over. There's not many like wolf pelts or anything like that. It's extremely dab. It's just a simple color. We'll begin our journey on the far-flung homeworld of Barbarous. This is another death world, and actually in specific it's a feral world. But unlike Caliban, Barbarous is a death world for an entirely different reason. The atmosphere is filled with these varying levels of toxicity. The higher you go in altitude, the more toxic.
It's filled with Nurgle farts, ladies and gentlemen. That is what it's filled with. We have covered Mortarion a little bit, and like we know he grew up on a bad planet. We know again that, you know, Magnus, another one, who actually Magnus didn't grow up on a bad planet, did he? Or did he? Conrad definitely grew up on a bad planet. Yeah, I can't remember where everyone grew up because I can't even remember all the names. Yesterday someone asked me to name 10 in the Discord and Primarchs, and I could just about name 10 in the Discord. But anyway, we're gonna continue.
The air becomes, with the valleys being home to the humans of the planet. And Barbarous was essentially divided into 2 castes. The ruling caste of these necromancer warlords that live in lofty castles and towers high up in the mountains. This affords them the comfort of security, you know, essentially via the toxins that surround them. Then there's everyone else. So it's sort of a tyrannical rule here, where they lord over everyone from one high, quite literally, tower. But Mortarion was found amidst a battlefield of corpses by one of these warlords and taken in as his own, thus giving him the name Child of Death, hence Mortarion. The interesting thing is that baby Mort was found without any sort of protection against the toxins, his natural abilities as a Primarch shielding him from the poisonous fog. And this warlord that actually found him was the Overlord of Barbarous, the first of his name, biggest of the ugliest of necromancers, and the ruler of Barbarous. He kept Mortarion in this tower of sorts that was right on the edge of what Mort's preternatural abilities could protect him against. And while the Overlord himself moved his fancy lodgings to the tallest peak in the world, well out of Mortarion's reach. And it doesn't really talk about this being intentional, like maybe out of fear or anything like that. It just kind of says, like, happenstance. Like, oh, he was put in this tower, and then the Overlord made his tower over here. It's kind of a very weird statement, to be totally honest. But just as we've seen with all Primarchs, Mortarion started to gobble up all of the available knowledge to him. These things were like voracious babies that only wanted the sweet, sweet breast milk of knowledge and learning, which is a metaphor I'm going to stick with, despite how I feel in my stomach about that metaphor.
Yeah.
But eventually, Mortarion starts to question the beings in the valley, because the overlords don't tell him, or sorry, his overlord, the warlords, don't say that there's humans in that there valley over there. They just say, oh yeah, we get these corpses and stuff from the valley. And the necromancers are, again, not humans. They are, however, connected to the warp and the Empyrean, and that connection giving them the ability to live on this plague world. Now, the lore doesn't really describe them outside of being quote-unquote alien, but I recall that the older Index Astartes said that they were large, grotesque, cyclopean alien overlords. Now, it sounds like there were some form of plague bearer. I'm not overly sure, but they do both feed and experiment on human corpses. Some food for thought. Because I'm going to put in my mind that they were plague bearers, but maybe some form of like nascent plague bearer, maybe not all the way there yet. And
you know what's crazy is, from all the Primarchs we've seen, their story always kind of ties up. Like, Conrad went to the most depressing, dark city that there was, and then he is the most depressing, dark guy, and eventually just died for it. He just wanted to die. And same with this dude. You know, he went to the toxic planet where the living conditions are terrible and people are mutated and all kinds of shit, and eventually he just became that too. So,
entirely conjecture. That's no book. That's not written anywhere that I know about. But early, like 3rd, 4th edition lore definitely makes them out to be a lot more plague bearer-ish. Like plague bearers, again, being the Nurgle demons, that these big bloated stomachs, this big singular horn, one single eye, just disgusting looking things. Ugh, like an absentee landlord. But this kind of curiosity for these beings eventually leads good old Morty to breaking loose from his tower/prison, and he kills some of the guards in the process, and heads down to the valley. There, he discovers that the beings are actually human, and the truth was intentionally kept from him. And the peoples of Barbarous are at first quite afraid and standoffish to Mortarion. He's this pale, tall, gaunt figure that crawled out of the poison mists that they're afraid of. So I would be terrified in my own mind. But eventually, one of the warlords, these necromancers that we talk about, attacks the town that Morty finds himself in. So these people are being butchered left and right. Remember, these people have reverted to an almost pre-feudal type society with way less emphasis on warfare. A lot more farmers, hunter-gatherers. So Mortarion picks up a harvesting scythe, his new favorite weapon, and reaps, pun intended, a tally against the warlord's foes. And the lore talks about how the warlord sort of grins and backs up slowly into the protection of the mist, kind of thinking, oh, I'm safe from this. This is just a human. But
really, you're safe from a guy that's like 10 foot tall with a massive scythe that probably looks a bit like the Grim Reaper. Are you crazy, bro? Sometimes the stupidity of people in this universe gets me.
Mortarion responds by charging up into the mists and slaughtering the warlord. And with all kind of stories of antiquity, where we get these insurmountable odds, this showed the people of Barbarous that their evil masters could bleed, and that is a lot for the morale of a demoralized community, civilization, society here. We see that in a lot of things, in a lot of ancient history. But from here, Mortarion goes from town to town, sort of teaching about warfare, gathering armies that are the toughest folk of the land, and having his blacksmiths forge armor that protects them from the elements.
Nice.
So eventually, good old Morty knocks out all of these fortresses, overthrowing these warlords until he gets to the site of his adoptive father, the tallest peak in Barbarous that we talked about. And this is where the Emperor kind of comes in, and he's going around from town to town saying, hey, the Emperor is going to save us all. And Mortarion's like, who the hell is this Emperor guy? So he meets the Emperor. Mortarion meets the Emperor, and the Emperor makes him a bet. saying, hey, if you can beat the Overlord, then I'll leave. But if not, then you have to swear fealty to me and the Imperium of Man. As you can guess, Mortarion passed out on the way up to the mountain. It was just too toxic for even his Primarch body to endure. It talks about how his armor was literally rotting away from him and was damaging his own skin and harming him and his lungs. We'll get into that in a little bit here. But the Emperor then had to step in and kill the Overlord, which really left a bad taste in Mortarion's mouth. And there's something to be said about kind of like the honor of this situation, an honor kill on behalf of Mortarion for his adopted father. That was...
So the Emperor thought it was a way in, because he done it with Conrad as well, I think, did he not? He killed somebody for him. Like, that's how the Emperor always met them. He gave them a challenge that he knew they couldn't do, and then he would end up doing it for them, and they would just follow him. That would kind of make me angry too if I was on this mission, and the last mission I just couldn't, someone else just done it for me. That would be annoying.
Robbed from him by the Emperor, and definitely left an indelible mark on him. And this is something we even see with Angron, we'll get into soon, about how the Emperor comes in and saves Angron in the last minute, and it actually, what should have been a good thing, pisses Angron off, and he always holds it against him. But keeping to his promise, Mortarion took up the mantle of the Master of the Legion, renamed after the fighting force he had created on Barbarous. He was taking all these hardy folk from town to town. He renamed them the Death Guard. So the Death Guard are now the new name of the Legion that was formerly the Dusk Raiders. And there's this pretty cool moment in the lore where Mortarion sort of declares that the Dusk Raiders are now the Death Guard. He's got this big kind of quote here: "You are my unbroken blades, you are the Death Guard. By your hand shall justice be delivered, and doom shall stalk 1,000 worlds." This is actually inscribed up on one of the major flagships of the Death Guard, up on right as you enter the bridge. So all these legions are originally born out of Terra. Every single legion that we talk about at the very beginning of the Great Crusade all come from Terra. And there's actually a lot of moments in the latter part of the Great Crusade where the older Terran-born Marines faced a lot of prejudice from the Marines born of the worlds that these Primarchs all come from. And Mortarion is decked out in his rather drab-looking Terminator armor, wielding his massive scythe that he took from his adoptive father's corpse. And he definitely has an image befitting the Death Guard, this sort of Grim Reaper figure. But as a result of the toxins that ravaged his armor and body at the top of Barbarous, Mortarion has a giant rebreather affixed to his armor, allowing his lungs to work properly. I think Darth Vader meets Charon, the guy who ferries you across the river Styx. But we're going to get into that whole Terran-born Marine versus Primarch Homeworld Marine thing in a second. I wanted to bring that up because it's an important note that we're going to get into in a second here. But
so, really and truly, Mortarion was just born to be corrupted by Nurgle. Like, just everything right now. I know we haven't got up to him being corrupted yet, but everything right now is just leading straight to it. Let's be honest. The toxic thingy, the damage, the injuries, the rotting armor, everything.
As the Great Crusade kind of trudges forward, so do the Death Guard. These bringers of death, not overly concerned with rebuilding infrastructure or leaving a holdfast of Marines, would just kind of moves from system to system and bringing planets into compliance. And this is where Morty creates the doctrine to which the Death Guard fight under, that slow, constant, grinding war. Mortarion didn't slaughter heedlessly, though. He saw all this as working towards freeing mankind from oppression and tyranny. This is the root of his credo, and that breaking of shackles that he did for his people on Barbarous, he exacted across the entire universe, or well, the universe that he touched on in the Great Crusade, at least. With this came a certain fanaticism in the sense that the ends always justifies the means for the Lord of Death, and if it meant that humanity was freed, then no cost was too high. One must endure, be resilient, persistent, even outright savage to accomplish this goal. And that's kind of his credo. Everything has to be done to maintain this kind of justice for all. And that's an important note here. He is going for a universe where humanity is freed from bondage, freed from tyranny in any way, shape, or form. And through this sort of grim resolve, Mortarion sat on the outskirts of popularity with his brothers, really only finding a fraternal connection with Horus and Conrad Kurz, two gents I'm sure you could assume would be a bad influence in the years to come.
I was about to say, he does sound a little bit like Conrad. Conrad had the same kind of motivations when we watched his video. Like he was doing everything for the greater good, right? Kind of a bit like the Tao in a way. But you know, he was going to any ends to try and justify anything being wrong, right? Like he would flay the people, he would just chop them up, he would kill their families, whatever, and he would justify it by saying he's improving humanity. So I can see why Mortarion would find, you know, solace with Conrad, and Conrad's probably not the best guy to take any tips from, considering this guy captured multiple primarchs and tried to kill them and torture them and tried to see if they would be like him. The man conducted all kinds of odd experiments. Like, yeah, I don't think Conrad's the right guy to be taking any kind of tips from. And we know what happened to Horus, so clearly, again, not one to.
But Mortarion even spoke out against Magnus during the Council of Nicaea, which earned him even fewer friends, because in Mortarion's mind, he was pretty well scarred by the whole, necromancer overlord thing. But in his mind, any form of psychic whatever was, not maleficarum, but in a lot of ways, an affront to humanity's freedom. And Morty was pretty strict about his company, and that extended to his Marines. And ensuring, we talked about this a second ago, but ensuring that only humans from Barbarous filled the ranks of the Death Guard. And the humans of Barbarous in specific have a natural resistance, and that's even amplified to freak levels when they become Space Marines. And this kind of plays into that credo here. And this further increases the division we talked about earlier with the Terran Barbaran-born population. That's going to come to a head here real soon. But Mortarion eventually, and obviously, sides with Horus during the events of the Horus Heresy. He was involved in the Dropsite Massacre of Istvan V, along with a slew of other legions. And we touched on this a bit in our Lion video, just kind of even briefly, because he didn't have any part in the Istvan V massacre, so I saved it for someone who at least was in it. But it's a pretty pivotal part of the Horus Heresy. It's really what really ignites and brings it to the fore. You know, at this point, like pre-Istvan V, it was only suspected that the Death Guard, Emperor's Children, Luna Wolves, or Sons of Horus at that time, and World Eaters had gone traitor. So,
Emperor's Children, Fulgrim.
Really only 4 legions here. And remember, we're dealing with 18. So, the Emperor dispatches 7 legions to bring Horus to heel, to answer for his transgressions. And of those 7 legions, 4 were actually already traitors. So you have this moment where the Iron Hands, Raven Guard, and Salamanders are all crippled, and these are obviously loyalist legions, but they're all crippled significantly by the combined might of all 8 legions that were allied against them. And it's a pretty scary moment in the history as Horus now outnumbers the full fighting force of the loyalist legions by destroying 3 of them right out the gate. So what would have been it's like a 9-on-9 becomes a 9-on-6, and that's pretty scary, even when you got the Emperor in your corner. And we talked about the Terran-born Death Guard. Well, the majority of them are wiped out prior to this at Istvan III. Istvan, in general, is the powder keg of the heresy, bringing everything into motion here. Now, Istvan III is important because all 4 of the aforementioned legions that are already on Istvan V, and the reason it's called the Dropsite Massacre is because when all of the legions dropped down and started to engage in conflict, all of them, the traitor legions, turned on the loyalist ones. So it was just a complete butchering. They didn't even see it coming. But on Istvan III, the Death Guard, Emperor's Children, Luna Wolves, and World Eaters all pretty much send their who they thought were Emperor loyalists down to the surface to fight, and then virus bomb the entire planet. So it kills off essentially 1/4 of the entire legion is killed at Istvan III because they're Terran-born Emperor loyalists. And this is where we get into Garo and the whole fight of the Eisenstein and the eventual birth of the Grey Knights from this moment here. But
so did they send people of their own legions down too that they thought were traitors? Is that what we said? That'd be a bit mad. Yeah, we need to do the Grey Knights video too.
We'll save that for another video, but just in case any of you bring it up. I know about it too. I was thinking about it. Now, there's a really huge chunk of history that deals with Jagatai Khan of the White Scars, Mortarion, but really that's more about the Khan himself, so we'll save a lot of that for his video. But there's a point where the Khan and Mortarion square off on the ruined world of Prospero, you know, the home of the Thousand Suns Legion after it was well, it was before even this, but they go to the planet after it's scoured by the Space Wolves, and they have this kind of titanic hand-to-hand duel with their honor guards squaring off against each other, and Morty is followed around by his Death Shroud Terminators, all of which are adorned with their Man Reapers, you know, a direct reflection of their Primarch. And really, what this whole conflict is to prove is to show that Mortarion might have maybe joined the wrong side. The Khan even talks about it like, hey, you know, you and I were both on the fringe, but I embraced it, and that's what I wanted to be. You always rebelled against it, and you surrounded yourself by the things you hate the most. Lorgar is so embroiled with the Empyrean and psychic anything and possession that it's a direct affront to everything you stand for, Mortarion. Or you take a look at, not Horus, but Magnus the Red, who eventually joins de facto into Horus. It's definitely not as amiable as the rest of the other Traitor Legions, but Magnus the Red, who is the epitome of using psychers. So you have this kind of surrounding of these psychers to Mortarion, and Mortarion is trying to find a friend more so than he's trying to get Khan on his Horus's side. So it really goes quite poorly for him, and Morty goes into the heresy trying to get rid of the psychers, as we've talked about. He believes that they're shackling mankind, and also, well, we know how much he hates them from the necromancer thing, but he was kind of led astray by Horus here. I mean, even the Emperor's children get embroiled with Slanesh real quick. Like, they're all having these screechy little voice boxes right out the gate. Their noise marines are coming to the fore very early in the Horus heresy. But after the truth that the Warhawk, that's another name for Jagatai Khan, that's kind of his title, delivered upon him and his bitter defeat, Mortarion kind of goes in search for some answers here. You know, the Great Khan kind of opened up a pretty big rent in his resolve and said, "Listen, you did not do the right thing." And the Khan kind of goes off on his own. We'll talk about him and what he ends up doing to kind of find his own answers as well. So they kind of both part ways, saying, "Well, we won't kill each other today." But on Terrathalion, he glasses this entire planet. It's a library world. Best way to seek knowledge: destroy it. Something a Sith would do. So he destroys the entire planet from orbit.
That's true. That is something the Sith would do. Yep, just destroy the knowledge. That's what they love to do in 40k. Just destroy anything that could be helpful.
Before taking a soul survivor, a woman possessed by a demon. And the demon kind of cues Mortarion in on the true order of things. That's what he tells him is why the Emperor's children or the word bearers have fallen to the ruinous powers. And he tells him that he needs to kind of tap into his nascent psychic abilities. And you can imagine that he doesn't want to do that. Mortarion's not about that. He doesn't want to even get involved with that. And there's a whole point in the lore where he keeps kind of goading him on and goading him on and goading him on. And even to the point where he breaks out from the human shell that he's in to attack Mortarion. And Mortarion can't use his physical strength to defeat this demon, and it outright just pisses him off. So he starts to summon up the psychic abilities that are nascent within his body, and that's true of a lot of other Death Guard, like Typhon, for example. Typhon is also a nascent psyker. But eventually, after being kind of goaded into this frenzy, he uses these abilities to straight up rickroll the demon into a bloody pulp, just completely battering him down. And this is where things really start to go downhill for the Death Guard. They really start to spiral out of control. Because during their transition from the Warp to Holy Terra, Typhon, the first captain, led the entire Legion into the clutches of Nurgle, the Lord of Decay. And Typhon was corrupted pretty early in this whole space opera. Before the Death Guard even turned from the Emperor, he joins one of the lodges at the behest of Erebus. And it's really a repeating trend we're going to see. The confidants of all the Primarchs, or at least people that are very close to them, are instrumental in their fall from the Emperor's grace, or they're sticking to the Emperor's side. The first captains are a lot of these people, or Erebus, the first chaplain of the Word Bearers, just goes from legion to legion, poisoning people. The whole reason Horus falls is because of Erebus and his whole like shenanigans on Davin, which we'll get into, and not to be confused with Davin from Star Wars. But still, Typhon eventually grows to fall in line with Nurgle. So his allegiance is to Nurgle way before it's even to Mortarion, Horus, or Emperor, or the False Emperor. So he leads them willingly into the warp here and into Nurgle's hands. He kills all of the navigators himself and says, no, trust me, Mortarion, I can lead us through. I have these nascent abilities. And Mortarion's not happy, but says, I got no choice.
So this first mate of his, or his second in command, this got corrupted by Nurgle and led him to Nurgle. So it's similar to Magnus. He didn't really want to turn, but he kind of had to, you know?
So eventually, once they kind of encounter Nurgle in the warp, more or less, the entire legion is beset by the Destroyer Plague and Nurgle's rot. And the Death Guard are afflicted by all forms of maladies and poxes. So, I mean, we've already talked about their ability to resist these plagues above even normal Marine standards. And that's what actually hinders them. They can't die because they can some way at the very end of it all resist it somewhere or another, keeps them alive, but still not 100% healthy, I guess you could say. But as a result, you kind of have the entire legion corrupted. And Mortarion really offered up his soul and his legion to the ruinous powers, and he kind of gets reborn as the demon prince of decay, and his legion becomes the plague marines. And this is where we see the Death Guard now as the puppets of Nurgle kind of lording over the planet of decay in the Eye of Terror. During the Horus Heresy, the last parts in the actual Siege of Terra, when all the other legions kind of scatter to the seven winds here, Mortarion and the Death Guard are the only ones kind of following that slow grinding warfare credo that he's instilled into the Legion, slowly have like a rolling retreat back to the Eye of Terror, where they find or I guess establish the planet of decay. But it's kind of still playing heavy into their overall credo. But the post-heresy world, or after the Horus Heresy, and what kind of happens, there are a number of kind of incursions into the Imperium by the agents of the Death Guard, or even the mighty Typhon himself, all reaping these massive tallies, either by plague or war in the systems that they infect. And the Typhon, he's the host of the Destroyer Plague. He's got a bunch of different cool titles, and that's changed over the editions from edition to edition. But enter the 8th edition, and the Plague Wars all throughout Ultramar. We're getting a really crazy point in the history of Warhammer 40,000 here. We're in the 42nd millennium. So now we're starting to see the storyline advance. People are starting to come to and from history here. We've got Cypher starting to play a heavy hand again. We've got the Eldar starting to try and rebirth the Aeneid. So we've got all these kind of things that are going down. But as soon as Bobby G was redirected by the Aeneid, I might be pronouncing that wrong. It's a crazy Eldar word. Who knows how to pronounce that? But a story we'll go into more with Bobby G's video. Nurgle looked at this as the opportunity to maybe bring another Primarch into the fold. So Mortarion launches a horrible campaign against Ultramar. And Ultramar is one of the biggest and most developed regions in the Imperium. And initially, Mortarion swept through the resistance. Plagues and Death Guard took a slow but grinding toll on the defenders of the Segmentum.
That is just like Nurgle, slow and grinding. He just gives you a disease and you just slowly decay away. I feel so bad for fucking Bobby G, bro. This guy's had to fight bloody every single corrupted Primarch. Like he had to fight Magnus. He had to fight Mortarion, and people have told me he had to fight others too. The thing with Bobby G is, and we said before, he's probably one of the worst in one-on-one combat. Legitimately, he's one of the worst. He's just very, very honourable, very, very sort of determined and motivated, disciplined guy. He's not very talented in the combat realm. I mean, he does have the Emperor's Blade now, but still, it's a bit it's a bit of a sticky one that he's had to fight Magnus, and I'm pretty sure Magnus was kicking his ass, and then Mortarion. Poor guy, bro. I feel bad for him.
And Robert Gieman, or I actually watched a video on this. Robert Gilliman eventually returned from the century-spanning Indomitus Crusade. This is where he kind of brings the Primaris Marines up and out to the world. He meets Mortarion's offensive with a counterattack after counterattack. And eventually, the two Primarchs fight to a standstill before Mortarion kind of vanishes under the guise of a virus bomb. Kind of the weird cryptic stuff that Games Workshop typically uses to say, hey, there was a conflict, but we didn't want to kill either one of these off, so we'll put them in two other corners until a later date. But this is where things are at now. Mortarion is the first of the Traitor Primarchs to return to the 42nd millennium in the 8th edition of Warhammer 40,000. So we see this Primarch go from a resolute, singular entity of justice and freedom for mankind to a corrupted vessel of contagion and filth with Papa Nurgle. And it's most assured that he sits on a diseased couch, picking gnarly clumps of crud out of his belly button while waiting for his next attack. And I'm excited to see what Primarch will be our next to join the fray of the 8th edition. But hopefully, this kind of gives you guys an idea of the master of the 15th Legion. No, 14th Legion. 14th. I was right. And his rise and eventual fall to chaos here. You have a really amazing character here with Mortarion, because Mortarion is not overly different from Lionel Johnson, but they do fit pretty well on different ends of the spectrum almost entirely, because Mortarion is very much on the fringe of everything, whereas Lionel Johnson is very much in the center of a lot of it all. So hopefully this was a good segue from one loyalist Marine or loyalist legion into a Traitor Legion, and you guys enjoyed it. Feel free to let me know.
Yeah, we're gonna have to check out Lionel Johnson. I'm pretty sure his video is queued. I think it's a very long one. I think it's like 40 odd minutes though. But yeah, man, Mortarion, interesting. Seems like he's not really too covered in the lore so far. Like, they haven't really explored his character too much, considering this is one of the shorter Primarch videos I've seen. But yeah, man, he just, I kind of feel bad for him. Not as bad as I felt for Magnus, but in a way, he was on the fringe like most of them, and he just fell into the realm of chaos. Some of it his fault, some of it his captain's fault, Typhus or Typhoon or whatever his name was, I can't remember. Tyrus. You know what? I don't remember, but that guy, he kind of just led him straight to Nurgle, which is a shame. I think it would be so cool though if they ended Warhammer 40k as we know it, with like all of the Primarchs that are alive coming back and just fighting each other, like all the traitors and all the loyalists just fighting each other. But right now the only loyalist that seems to be alive and walking around is Bobby G, so it'll be 1v4 on Bobby G of Demon Princes, and I'm not too sure Bobby G is going to win that. But anyway, man, thank you all for watching this video. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're new. Join our Discord, and I'll see you all next time.